glance, she's over me. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal. I didn't hear us come in. We usually have the bumper music on the front end of the show, but apparently we're live. And so there we go. I'm sure maybe you guys out there heard it, but it didn't come through. So I wasn't sure where the hell I was at. But that's not unusual here on the Portal. I don't always know where I'm at. But welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of the Paranormal Portal and what we do. And we are here live broadcasting on this fine day, the 14th. This is live and unrehearsed, and tonight we got a very special guest joining us. But as usual, if you'd like to be a part of the show and would like to participate in the discussion, you certainly can do that. The call-in number is 213-233-3998. Again, 213-233-3998. Or if you're calling from the UK, your access number would be 44203-393-2871. Again, 44203-393-2871. And you can also call, if you're in the U.S., you can call 833-TFR-LIVE if you need a toll-free access number, but that's always an option. And there you have it. So we are live and going on, and if you'd like to be a part of any of the TFR Live chat or the YouTube chat, you can chat on the TFR Live channel by going to tfrlive.com/chat, and you can register with the username and password and set up your own chat account here, and a bunch of wonderful people always here listening to the shows, and great entertainment all around. And if you'd like to chat on the YouTube app, then that's fine too. You can go to youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, where this is being simulcast currently, and hopefully that'll all work out for you. But we are all over the map. We are on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream Live. It's just a portal kind of night, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm really thrilled that you're here joining here with me. I don't know what the hell that was supposed to be, but absolutely thrilled. So before I go any further, I would like to just take a moment and introduce our guest for tonight, because just a fantastic person. Now, this is someone that I am actually bumped into in the Facebook world, and being obviously a paranormal enthusiast, which I clearly am. I did a lot of looking around for different places for information on the paranormal, because I love to see what people are up to. I love to see what people are doing out there. And I ran across this group. It's Paranormal Science Lab on Facebook. And that's where I had the opportunity to meet our guest tonight, which is Lisa Martin. I'm so sorry. Lisa Martin. And she is a fantastically involved person in the paranormal. She and her group do a lot of outings. They do a lot of ghost hunts, ghost walks, and investigations. And she is additionally a published author of 4 books: Civil War Ghosts of Southern Missouri from 2011 in history on the History Press, Haunted Joplin, which came out in 2012, the History Press, and Missouri's Wicked Route 66, Gangsters and Outlaws on the Mother Road, 2013, the History Press, and Haunted Carthage, Missouri in 2013, also from the History Press. And additionally, her group has been involved with several television shows, which one is Strange World, which is out of Europe, but apparently coming to the North America continent as well, and also on Monsters and Mysteries in America and Ghost Hunters. Season 10, they were on there as well. So I mean, this is somebody with a really impressive laundry list to back them up, and just a real amazing person. Not to mention a lawyer as a day job. So this is definitely the overachiever type of person that you would imagine that she is. So, Lisa, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. And that was a very kind introduction. Yeah, I do tend to overachieve, I have to admit. Not necessarily one of my better qualities at times.
Well, I think it's really impressive. And now in your group, and I'm just a little bit familiar with your work, but with the little bit of familiarity I have, I'm absolutely impressed with. You guys have really done a nice job posting information, posting background stories on a lot of different sites around the nation. But I gotta wonder, how did this all start for you? Where did this journey begin?
Well, for me personally, it started in childhood. I grew up on a farm that we didn't know until years and years later had been the site of a Civil War battle, and different things would happen that couldn't be explained. So I was always curious, and my interest in history and the unusual just kind of lent to it. But I grew up, went off to college, went off to law school, started a family, and the paranormal was kind of far from my mind for quite a few years, and was really renewed, about 18, 19 years ago. I was actually looking at a house to buy, and my ex-husband and I were viewing it with an agent, and we'd been through the upstairs. It was an arts and craft turn-of-the-century home, and the agent and I had come back downstairs, and he had lingered upstairs, and she and I are talking at the base of the stairs, and it was kind of a switchback. You had like 4 flights of stairs, rapid succession there, and as we're talking, I noticed that he starts down the stairs and he keeps stopping and looking over his shoulder. And I'm talking numbers and that kind of thing with the agent. And I keep thinking, what are you doing? And he finally gets downstairs and he goes, did you guys hear that?
Uh-huh.
And we're like, no, it's still, ghosts or whatever, the furthest thing from my mind.
Uh-huh.
Then we're down in the basement, and the old boiler was sitting there in the main room, and I was just kind of standing there for a second. The other two had walked off to a side room, and suddenly I had very distinct, very cold sensation, almost like dry ice, of a thumb being laid on one side of my throat, and one by one, 4 fingers on the other side.
Ooh. So
that it was gripping my throat. And then it went through the back of my neck.
Oh my God.
And so I thought, okay, well, that's a little up and close and personal to do my laundry down here. But so I walked over to the room where they had gone, and I hear the agent say, well, I don't know what this room would have been used for. And I walk to the door, and I get the sensation of blood running. And I thought, okay, that's strange. And I look in, and one wall is covered in very old apothecary cabinets. There are 7 metal sinks along another wall, and about the biggest drain in the floor you'd ever seen. And I just looked at her and said, I'll tell you what it was. It was the embalming room. And I turned around and started up the stairs. And she runs after me, and I can still hear her high heels clicking on the concrete floor. And she goes, well, I guess I should tell you this was a mortuary in the 1920s. And I just said, yeah, I figured that one out. And
wow.
We ended up not getting that house, but I actually bought a house a couple blocks away. And so it's in the neighborhood. I still live here. Uh-huh. It's in the neighborhood, and people don't generally live there too long.
Oh, so pretty active house then. Yeah.
I mean, even Even walking in the neighborhood, I'll find that I tend to walk across the street from it because you can just feel the
Uh-huh.
energy from it.
Now,
And I actually ran into a couple at one of our events a couple of years ago, um, who got to talking, and they had family members who owned the house for a time back in the 80s, and they talked about things that happened in the house.
oh,
And it was very active then too. So,
oh boy.
but it was that event that kind of got me reinterested and started researching, investigating, and then writing.
Oh, okay. Now I got to ask you, are you muffling your mic somehow? Because it's like, or turning your head as you're talking, or something, because it gets real muffled
No,
from time to time when you were talking. So I didn't know if something was hitting the microphone or what. But just
no, it shouldn't anything. Nothing's been moving.
okay. Well, yeah, it's definitely getting really muffled from time to time, but that's not
Okay.
unusual on the Paranormal Portal either. This is,
Yeah.
I say it tongue in cheek, but honest to God, sometimes I swear the show is haunted. So I don't know, I don't know what's going on.
Well, Skype can be haunted at times as well.
Yeah, it's definitely got its mind of its own, and this newer version is all kinds of problems for so many of us, especially those of us that use it for part of what we do, like on these shows. We have to deal with all the quirks as well. But so you didn't get that home, and you said that other people don't live there very long. Have you heard any of the other stories coming out of there, or is this?
Um, I haven't. I mean, I've heard, just general, people rumoring that they've heard this or that, but um, as far as people who've had firsthand experience, really the people that who had family that owned it back in the 80s are the ones that gave me the most information, and
Mm,
they definitely basically confirmed um, similar types of experiences that I had.
sure. Yeah.
So
Wow.
uh, definitely active, and I don't even know whether it was threatening or just trying to get a reaction out of me. I didn't get a foreboding sense or anything.
Okay.
Um, More that it's like, aha, I got your attention.
Yeah, something about a hand around the neck. It's hard to ignore.
Yeah, it definitely gets your attention. That's for sure.
Wow. But at that time you didn't feel like it was choking you. You just felt it was just like this hand was there grabbing you, or what
Yeah, I
sometimes
mean, and it was very, I mean, deliberate.
okay.
One, thumb, then one finger, then the nets, then the nets, then the nets. So it was like a
Oh.
very deliberate, I'm letting you know I'm here thing.
Now, can I ask you a question? And it's kind of an offshoot of what we're talking about, but it's a real curiosity for me, and this is something I've wondered about for a long time. And
Mm.
just in what you're describing now, it seems to almost illustrate what I believe could be going on in these situations. Now, I know that in a lot of cases, it's believed that spirits just really want to tell their story. They want to tell what happened, how they were hurt, or how they were how they got to where they're at. And a lot of times they'll do that through physical sensations. And could it be that in a situation like this, that the ghost was like, "Hey, yeah, I'm here, and check it out. I died like this," and then the hand on the neck.
Well, I mean, that's possible, but
Hmm.
I didn't get that sensation. I got
Okay,
the sensation that someone was getting my attention.
right.
I often will have a physical sensation um, regarding how someone passed that I've
Mm,
encountered.
wow.
Um, Say if it was choking, I'll feel like I'm actually choking, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I got this. It was more of a I'm getting your attention.
Mm,
Maybe even this is my playground type thing. Um,
yeah.
I'm in control type thing.
Oh, okay. I see.
But I do think that they do try to communicate at times, whether it's intentional or not. I don't know, as far as manner of death and so forth.
Hmm.
Um, and to be perfectly honest, I tend to lean to some of the theories that are based more in quantum physics, that we may be dealing with a function of time and space more than someone lingering for 100 years.
Okay.
That we don't quite understand the mechanics of yet, but where 2 points in time interact. And so we get a glimpse of that moment, and they may be getting a glimpse of our moment as well.
Oh, that's very, very interesting, and I can't say that I've heard that, but I love that idea, and I think that that's incredibly profound.
Well, I mean, it goes along with, I mean, you have the theories as to multiverses and other dimensions and so forth, but multiverses are also an interesting concept that which they've proven theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it would be that there are innumerable universes that basically all look alike, but there are slight differences between this one and another and another.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in another one, you may be the president of the United States. In another one, I might be Queen of England, that kind of thing.
Sure, right.
And I saw an interview with Stephen Hawking a few years ago talking about it. And he had explained this, and the host, you see the light bulb go off on his face, and he goes, "Oh, so you mean there's a universe where I'm smarter than you?" And Hawking says, "Yes, and there's one where you're funnier than me too."
Oh, that's brilliant.
So, there's theories that we may be actually bumping into other multiverses, and the bleed through we experience as paranormal activities. So I think those possibilities are very possible.
Mm-hmm.
We may be dealing with things that are lingering in time, but we may not.
Right, and that's a really curious. It would definitely explain a lot of residual things, and this whole idea that the stone tape idea, or the fact that residual haunts, where these things just keep repeating, and they just seem like these, they're obviously no awareness. They're whatever happened, however long ago. The person walking on the same path every night,
right?
That kind of thing. That would certainly explain a lot of that for sure. I wonder about more intelligent haunts where they are, interacting with the people there, and
I think it may explain intelligent haunts even more so, because if basically we're existing in our moment and they're existing in theirs,
mm-hmm.
both very much alive and kicking, and somehow those moments are interacting, where we get a disembodied voice, they may be getting a disembodied voice.
Right.
Or where we see something, they may be seeing something.
Mm-hmm. That's really profound.
It's
very profound.
So I think it's very possible that interactive hauntings, intelligent hauntings, could be accounted for that way, because you would be dealing with a sentient living person who is having a similar experience. And there are EVP sessions out there that have been documented that kind of indicate that. There was actually one on Ghost Hunters that was kind of interesting as a reference point, because a lot of people have seen it. And it was at the Stanley Hotel, and they're in a particular suite that a particular aristocrat from Europe or someplace would always stay. And so they were asking about her. Mm-hmm. And they actually, and on film, you hear what sounds like a woman's voice.
Yeah.
So they start asking, where are you? We can't see you, those kind of things. And EVPs come back in between what they're saying, of her basically saying, "I hear you, I don't see you."
Right. Yep.
And so, if you have 2 moments in time interacting, that's entirely plausible under that theory.
That's really cool too, and that's a great explanation for that. And I know exactly the clip you're talking about. It's like, and she's like, "Well, where are you? I can't hear you." Yes, of course I'm here, and
Yeah.
she's answering the questions, but to her, she's not seeing the room they're seeing, or at least she's not seeing the time they're seeing. So that's incredibly profound. I really like that explanation, and that really does. To me, it's a much nicer explanation to think that somebody's stuck in this limbo state that they're just can't get out of. To me, that would be horrid. So I like that explanation better, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, and the flip side of that is if we are dealing with spirit that lingers, I'm not so sure that they're stuck either.
Okay.
Particularly if you've worked with locations that appear to have portals or vortexes, there you will get things that indicate they can come and go. And I've never really been a proponent of spirit being stuck to four walls. I've seen too many situations where something is seen that's connected maybe somewhere in the area, but I don't think that just because a spirit is seen in a particular house that somehow they can't cross that boundary. I don't think it's like consecrated land and a vampire. So
no, that's true, and that makes perfect sense as well. So those are great great perspectives on this subject, and it's so nebulous. And one thing about the paranormal, and we've talked about this on the show many times, is that it doesn't lend itself to regular study. So it's really hard to nail these things down. But I think I'm really hopeful that as we learn more about the natural world around us and the natural order of things and how everything functions, that a lot of these questions will answer themselves just because they are a function of that natural order and that natural process.
Oh, I agree, and I think that's why progression in sciences will get us there eventually. Unfortunately, funding for parapsychology and different aspects of the field were cut after the 70s. So you don't have universities and think tanks working on the problems as much as you did for about 20 years. So that's why it's left to people like us who are really hobbyists. I mean, there's no expert out there. Unless you're doing a TV show, you're not doing this full time.
Yeah.
And even most people who do the TV shows aren't doing it full time. So, so it takes time, but you keep plugging away.
Well, and that's the good thing about the community, and that's one of the good things about your community, is that there are so many enthusiasts drawn together and able to share ideas and share thoughts, and I think that you're right. There's not these huge think tanks, but there are think tanks working on this in the form of groups like yours that are out there asking the questions. They're out there, getting into the field and looking at the phenomena directly and trying to come up with new ways to research it. So we may not be as efficient as a official study, but then again, we're a lot cheaper.
That's true. Well, except for when you're funding it yourself, it doesn't necessarily feel cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't begrudge you that. I mean, even doing the show, it's a labor of love. It's I'm certainly not able to pay the bills on the show, but someday maybe.
Exactly.
But for now, it's definitely a labor of love, which is I think what anybody involved in the paranormal is dealing with. They love doing it. They like getting out there and exploring, and I think that we all have that romantic side of us that love a world with mystery, that love a world that still has discovery and adventure, and so this is our way of recapturing that youthful energy, maybe.
Well, I think so, and as you said, everyone does love the mystery. I think by nature humans love puzzles, and so this is one of those things that it's a big puzzle, and it's not an easy solution like a jigsaw puzzle or something like that. It's not, cut and dry. So
Sure, absolutely. But no, this is great, and see, it's already off with a great start here tonight, with amazing thoughts, amazing theories, and amazing ideas to help close some of these blanks. I think that's wonderful.
well, thank you.
Well, we're just getting started.
No, but
What?
they intrigue me.
No, it's a great start, and we're getting close to our first break of the night already. It's already been the first half hour is almost spent, if you can believe that. That's how quickly the time flies here on the portal. But we are, ladies and gentlemen, going to take a break here in just about a minute. But be sure, if you're wanting to learn more about the paranormal, please stop over Facebook, look for Paranormal Science Lab, and check out Lisa's group. It's just an amazing group of amazing people coming together to do something that they love. And check out the Paranormal Portal page if you're haven't already done it. It's facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio. And make sure, if you're not already a subscriber to our YouTube page, to go over there. It's youtube.com/Paranormal Portal. And there's lots of ways to stay involved and in touch. And we are always continuing. But if you want to be a part of the show, you can certainly call in. We're probably going to open the calls in the second hour of the show, ladies and gentlemen. So if you'd like to call in, please do. It's 213-233-3998. Again, 213-233-3998 or 833-TFR live. Now, I don't know if we're going to get bumper music on the way out or not, but I'm going to look at the clock and play it like it's planned. So the break music should be starting right about now. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't go away. We'll be back in just a couple minutes here on the Paranormal Portal for more of our amazing discussion with Miss Lisa Martin here on the Paranormal Portal. We'll be right back. This is the hard part, sitting here without any bumper music. It's supposed to be playing, and it will be on the final cut of what's on TFR Live, but it's not playing here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and you are watching the Paranormal Portal. Happy Friday. You made it through the week, and we are 1/2 hour already under our belt into the show tonight, but we are joined by Mrs. Lisa Martin here on the Paranormal Portal, who is one of the founders, and maybe the founder, I forgot to ask you, but of the Paranormal Science Lab group on Facebook, and she's an avid researcher of the paranormal in terms of ghosts and UFOs and pretty much everything you can throw at her, as well as being a published author and has appeared on several television shows relating to the paranormal and is also a full-time attorney. So she is joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, so let's get back into it. Welcome again, Lisa, to the show, and thank you again.
Oh, very, very glad to be here. I'm enjoying it.
Well, good, because I'm definitely enjoying having you, and it really is a phenomenal start to the journey tonight, just in what we covered in the first half hour. I just love these shows that have such insight and revelation, because as we were talking about, the paranormal is such a nebulous field, and there's so many ideas and considerations out there about what is going on. So it's nice to have a fresh opinion and a fresh look at things with new ideas that I hadn't heard before. So very exciting. But we got into a little bit about how this journey started for you and such. But at what point did you decide that you were going to do investigating? Like, this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I did a lot of research and started some writing projects and investigating more on my own. And then, about 9 or 10 years ago, started networking with some other people in my area, actually several other attorneys, people in the medical field, electricians, different professions. And then over time, we ended up putting the group together. So we all kind of came at it from different perspectives from our fields, but we're all interested in trying to approach it as objectively as possible, and basically as documentarians, documenting things instead of trying to put ourselves in the middle of it. So although we have people involved that are intuitives and empaths, etc., we don't focus on that. Sure. As far as our investigation techniques or evidence. Mm-hmm. So we differ from some teams in that regard. So, but we do that simply for the fact that we don't view that we have an agenda or a purpose as far as we're going in, we're moving people over to the other side of the veil, those kind of things. Sure. We tend to try to leave that to certain clergy that have experience in doing those things. If it's a situation that seems to really call for that, we very much are interested in building a body of research and helping people as well, but we tend to stay away from more of the esoteric aspects of it.
Sure. Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, that you're looking at it from a more clinical perspective, looking at the phenomenon and documenting that and trying to find that kind of evidence, and that's incredibly profound too. And I think that we certainly need people like you in the field as well, because, and I'm certainly not knocking anybody's approach, but the more ideas and the more approaches that are entered into this, the more we have an opportunity to learn. Because if it's all just an homogeneous approach, we can only follow that homogeneous path, and we can never deviate. We can never, experiment outside of that, because it's just this one ideology. So I really think that that's a brilliant approach, and it's nice that you guys are out there doing it. I have to ask.
Now, but by the same token, there are times that we have depending on a particular situation, we've worked with psychics and clergy, etc. If it comes down to, it's a matter of, is this something that emotionally, spiritually is going to benefit a client? But we don't per se look at that as evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And we make that distinction, where I know there are others who don't. And I'm not saying it's better one way or the other. It's just the path that we chose.
No, and that's perfect. Now, I have to ask you, was it hard to find a group of people in those communities that were willing to research this and look into it, or was it easier than one would think?
Well, I mean, it really wasn't that difficult.
Okay.
I mean, of course, it was. It really started out several people who knew each other, who knew we had similar interests, and then reaching out. Well, I know someone that I think is, like-minded and in this background, etc. And it really just came together. It wasn't something that had to be forced.
Oh, cool. But you know what I'm saying, right? It's like you think of like engineers and stuff, and while I know there are certainly plenty that are interested in the paranormal, a lot of times it's like, oh, come on, really, and you think,
Well, yeah.
many others in those scientific fields don't have as much room in their belief system, and maybe that's me really painting with a real wide brush, which wouldn't be fair either. I guess I don't know that for sure, but I'm just thinking, I guess, in terms of stereotypes, which isn't probably really good either.
Well, I mean, I think for a lot of us that came together, just like I had, different ones that had different experiences in their lives that fell into that paranormal realm that they, could not necessarily explain by other means. And so even though they were very logical engineers, medically trained, etc., they're still interested in finding out why do these things happen.
Right.
And so we just kind of pooled those resources, those skill sets, and approached it of how would we solve problems in our various careers, and approached it that way.
That's really cool. That's amazing. Now, where did you start? How did you get off the ground with all of this? Because, of course, nowadays in our society, there's a abundance of paranormal shows on TV, and of course, everybody wants to be an investigator. Everybody wants to get out there and do that, to form a group and to get out there and to go into places. How does one start?
Well, for us, getting our circle together, between everybody, we had lots of contacts in the community, friends and business contacts, etc. And you'd be surprised. I was really surprised about how open a lot of people were to us, especially in the beginning. And a lot of it was either people knowing we were interested and saying, hey, I've got this building and this has happened or whatever, or us approaching someone that we knew, there were stories about a property. And to be honest, I think our backgrounds helped us in that regard.
Yeah,
because
being professionals already, it's not like your integrity was ever in question, I imagine. Yeah, or that you were going to come in and act a fool in some property.
Right. And, we had, we could give referrals, references from, business associates, so forth. And so that helped us. That kind of coalesced and helped us in that regard. Like I said, in that regard, we were lucky. it started small and it grew over the years. And we've worked very hard at maintaining credibility and good work relationship with clients and locations and the media, and have just built it up over time.
Yeah, and that's definitely how it works, right? Is it spider webs, and a reputation, I think, is the big thing. Is once people know you, you're a known commodity, and people can reflect and go, yeah, they were really professional. It was wonderful. That certainly helps. So that is amazing. Now I know that you guys do a whole lot of research in different fields. I guess you do research the UFOs. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. Not as much as more hauntings, but we have and other physical anomalies or phenomena. We're kind of fortunate right here that we have one of the more infamous earth lights right in our back door. The Joplin spook light. It goes by several different names, but if you've heard of the Marfa lights or some of the other earth lights around the world, we have one literally 15 miles from my front door that has been documented since the 1830s. Wow. And we have investigated cryptid cases as well. So
now that's really interesting. And those spook lights, it seems like every place has some version of that. And I know there's, of course, a million theories of that alone floating out there. What did you guys find out? I mean, when you looked into it, did you come to any kind of conclusion at all?
Well,
is it
the Joplin spook light is pretty unique in that it's actually been researched probably more than any of the others that I'm aware of anyway. The Corps of Engineers has researched it. Couple of different universities have researched it, and this goes back into the 40s and 50s. And there is no definitive answer. There are two prevalent conclusions that people will sort of default to as possibilities. One is swamp gas, and it's not a marshy area.
Okay.
There's no decaying organic matter anywhere close. And that's one of those things that locals will, swamp gas, because, there's just not the conditions for it.
Sure.
The other is that you're seeing reflected headlights off of clouds from the interstate, which from the angle it would be about 12 to 15 miles away.
Wow. Okay.
And in theory, that's possible, in a very particular atmospheric condition. Sure. Once in a blue moon. However, it's not seen in just one spot or one direction.
Right. Wow.
And it was documented. It was actually first documented in writing during the Trail of Tears, when the government moved the Cherokee Indians to Oklahoma. Okay. So in the 1830s. So I really don't think it was headlights.
Yeah, probably not. Wow, I'm surprised ball lightning didn't come up in there somewhere. That seems to be another common one they throw at any kind of light anomaly.
I mean, actually, ball lightning. Some of the videos of ball lightning, and I actually watched a documentary on ball lightning not long ago, where they had physicists discussing it, and one of the videos that they were talking about looked a lot like what the spook light will look like.
Okay.
However, they couldn't debunk it in any way. They just said this really looks like ball lightning, but we're not really sure how it happened or how it sustained itself for as long as it did.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
just fantastic. Wow.
and the thing is, the light will appear and disappear and reappear very quickly, sometimes split into multiple balls and reform. Um, and to be honest, it looks more like plasma or something than anything,
Sure.
a ball of plasma. So, but how specifically it forms, I don't know. Do I think it's a haunting? No. I think it's some physical property, but I can't tell. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've heard theories on some of the Earth lights, that they're landing indicators for UFOs. They're this and that,
Right.
interdimensional, that kind of thing.
Sure.
I don't know about that. I think it's a natural phenomena, but they just haven't quite figured out how it works. Now, in our area, we're on a plateau of limestone, so you have a lot of crystal, which is a good conductor of energy, and we have a lot of underground rivers. So,
sure. Isn't there
so I don't know whether it has something to do with the geology or what exactly.
Isn't there a big fault that runs up there through there too in Missouri?
No, actually, that's on the other side of the state. That's about 350 miles away on the other side of the state. But see, a lot of times ball lightning is seen either over volcanoes or earthquake fault lines. Yeah, but there isn't one here. So within about 350 miles.
Jeez. So check mark off. Not that. It's definitely not swamp gas. And what is it? Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know of anybody that's really gotten real up close and personal with any of that phenomenon. I know that there are people that claim that they have observed those kind of light anomalies moving around through forests, almost moving intelligently. Like they have
I've seen it, and I it's very common around here for people who have seen these kind of things. I've seen it appear, and not you go down there. You might have two cars facing each other. I've seen it just appear in between the two cars, out of nowhere.
Wow.
Disappear. It's known to float through cars. People who live down there, they've walked into a barn and it be, floating in the barn.
Wow.
It's, and those are stories that have been going on for almost 200 years. So
now the interesting thing is and I never want the show to be about me, but this is an experience that I've actually had. And I've had several paranormal experiences, but one of which is to see an orb like twice right in front of me. Now they were not huge. Like a lot of people describe orbs that they've seen as being like the size of softball or the size of a basketball, that kind of thing. The ones that I saw, both occasions, were about the size of a quarter or a 50-cent piece. And the first one I saw, which was back when I lived in Minnesota, it would just drifted right in front of my eyes. And it looked like a little golden sun. And it was about literally a foot off of my nose, just floating right in front of me. And floated right by. And I was looking at it. And the only thought I had was, wow, that's really cool. Should I grab it? But then I thought, I'm not so sure what that is. I don't think I'm going to grab it. And I didn't. And then it moved past me and just was gone. Boom. And the next time I saw one was when I got up in the morning and was going to the kitchen to make coffee. And this was in this house that I'm living in now in north of Idaho. And this little orb was about a foot off the ground and glided around the corner in the kitchen and came like right in front of me and swerved around my legs and was gone. And it was these little balls of light both times. And I know many people attribute that to a spiritual manifestation, and I don't pretend to know for sure what they are. I guess I thought that it must be some kind of intelligence of some sort, because it seemed to have, again, both cases, the first time I saw it was like, it was just like, huh, who are you? You know, like drifting right by me,
Uh-huh.
checking me out. The second time was like, oh, you're up. Let me get out of here. You know? So I don't know. Very interesting though. But
I mean, I'm kind of the same way, and I guess you could look at it, well, if it, especially something that's up close like that, is it is it some set, kind of like magnetics or
yeah,
matter and antimatter, something that somehow it's attracted or repelled by our energy fields? I don't know. Or is it intelligent? I don't know. But I've seen those phenomena as well.
okay.
A lot, even a few times they're just small, almost like pinpoint lights.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've seen in one location floating ball of light that would, I'd say, be somewhere between a softball and a basketball.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in that case, I've seen it a couple of times in this location and float through a doorway and kind of meander around the edge of the room and then go out another doorway, which gave you the sense that it was somehow intelligent or being directed somehow.
Right, yeah.
It didn't bump into the wall or anything like that. It floated in and followed the wall around roughly,
Mm-hmm.
and then floated out another doorway.
Right. And what, what do you do with that information? That's one of those things. It's like, what do you do with that?
I don't know. The first time I saw it at this location, and like again, it was fairly large. I and one other investigator were sitting in the room, and I looked up and said, and I have to say, my reaction was, "What the hell is that?"
It's like, yeah, it's one of those things that you just get to be a spectator of, but what is it? Is it aware of us? Is it not aware of us? Is it thinking, or is it just some weird, like you said, magnetic thing? Well, it's hard to know, but that's the miracle of the paranormal. And I've said it many times on the show that I don't think the paranormal is a hiccup of reality or where things just went awry. I think that it's the breadcrumbs, it's the clues to the dynamic, amazingly deep and fluid reality that we live in. And these are just peaks at to what is possible.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's just like on a cosmic level, they're still discovering that. First of all, when they proved the existence of dark matter theoretically, it was theoretical. Then they've had some more specific findings in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still saying that they can't account for all the mass of the universe with matter and antimatter, that there's something else somehow factoring in that they haven't figured out. Well, these kind of phenomena, I just kind of view that as a spectrum. Eventually, we'll probably peel the layers back and start understanding how all of this fits together.
Yeah, and that's very exciting, and I don't know what that means, and maybe it's just because we're not ready for that much truth yet, or that much knowledge yet, or whatever. Not that there's necessarily has to be a grand design to it, but I just know that it seems like for every step forward that we take, the first considerations on a global scale is, wow, what kind of weapon can that make? So maybe we're not ready to know those things quite yet, but I'm excited for when we are. I think that's incredibly an exciting prospect, because I think, I agree with what Nikola Tesla said. It's just like, when we invest the time and energy into the what
Unseen.
Yeah, the unseen,
Into the unseen world.
right, will advance
Yeah.
further, than we have in all history combined. And so that's an exciting idea.
I do. I agree with that. I think it's a matter of science getting to the point of having the right tools to work on some of these issues.
Yes.
Too many other answers, they have to be figured out before this made sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of layers to it as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
So where will we end up next? Who knows? But I just know that the idea is absolutely intoxicating that these phenomena happen, and I love living in a world where this is possible, where these things happen, and where they're possible and exist, and people experiencing them. And that's one of the great joys of doing the show, is hearing people's stories, hearing what they've experienced, and having a chance to talk to people like yourself. That is incredibly powerful. Are you there?
I'm here. Are you there?
Yeah. I heard a clunk or something, so I just want to make sure I didn't lose you. Otherwise, I was
Yeah,
gonna have a
I
lot
heard
more
a click too. So
Okay, gotcha. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, if I know we're getting close to a break, but we can certainly talk about personal experiences if you want.
Oh, please, yeah, I'd love to hear all that you've got to share, and I know the listeners would love that as well. I mean, it's just a great opportunity to walk for a little bit in your shoes and see the things you've seen. So, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our hour break here, and we will be right back. I do apologize that the bumper music isn't coming on to cue it for us, but I'm not sure how it's going to come in, but it seems like tonight we don't have lead-ins or lead-outs. I know that Chris, the owner of the network, has been putting a lot of work into it and is actively working on the studio, so we will just play it like it's supposed to be, but we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen, so don't go away for the second hour of tonight's Paranormal Portal.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across
So on the second hour, we have this long lead-in that usually plays right now. It's the poltergeist thing, but it's not playing, so I'm going to have to just talk through it because the silence just feels awkward. So I hope you guys are all doing great out there in YouTube land. I don't know if on the network they can hear just me talking or if they're hearing the lead-in that should be playing now, but I'll just talk to you all as if it's live, and when it comes up, where the clock comes up and says I'm on the air, I'll say it all again. So hope you're doing great, though. I hope you guys are enjoying the show, and thank you all for being here and being a part of what we're doing. But it's definitely a great night and a great discussion, but if you want to call in and be a part of the show, please feel free to do that. I'm going to have to start watching the phone lines now because we're going into the second hour. But the call-in number is 213-233-3998. Again, 213-233-3998. So you can call in and be a part of tonight's show as well. But I'm waiting to formally open us back up from the break when the on-air sign goes on for the network. So I'm watching it. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. And we hope you're having a great Friday night. And thank you for joining us here on the Paranormal Portal. And we are having a phenomenal discussion here on the portal with our guest, Lisa Martin, who is established and prolific paranormal investigator, as well as one of the founding members of the Paranormal Science Lab group on Facebook, who has thousands and thousands of followers, just a great group. And she is joining us here tonight on the Paranormal Portal. So welcome back, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm having a good time.
Well, I'm glad you are, and I know, like you'd said, you had done your own podcast and stuff in the past, so that was really cool. It's nice to work with a fellow pro.
I don't know about that, but I can talk.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's great. Now, before break, you had mentioned going into some of your big accounts with the things you've experienced, and I know that I would love to hear it, and I'm sure our listeners would as well. So the floor is yours, ma'am.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, as a team and from an evidence point of view, we don't take personal experiences as evidence. But of course, when you're having that experience, it's the most real and convincing experience because you live it. And the old saying, "I know what I saw," etc. It holds true. I've encountered a number of people that were ardent skeptics until they had something happen to them, and
sure.
On various investigations, I've had a few of my own. One that I was just thinking about on break was a number of years ago at a luxury apartment house built in the early 1900s. It was empty at the time. It had closed, but and is notoriously haunted here in Joplin, Missouri. Probably the most haunted place in Joplin. And a team member and I were going up the back stairs. It's a 5-story building, and Bill was one flight of stairs above me, and I hear him go, "Oh my God, do you see that?" And I look up and look at the landing above me, and he's above it. I can't see him. And coming down the landing is what looks like a man in a 30s style suit with a fedora and what looks like a body wrapped in a sheet over one shoulder.
Oh, jeez.
And I just stand there, and it walks down and looks very, it's not translucent, it looks dense, but the colors are just slightly muted maybe. And as he approaches me, he turns and looks at me and touches the brim of his hat with his free hand and continues on down the stairs.
Oh my God.
Bill comes down after, and I said, "What did you see?" And he described exactly what I saw.
Wow. How profound is that?
And the interesting thing there is that Joplin was a frontier town in a lot of ways, a lot longer than the Old West. And we had a lot of mining. We had It was a hub for bank robbers and gangsters in the 20s and 30s. A lot of the 1930s gangsters that we remember, Pretty Boy Floyd, Machine Gun Kelly, Bonnie and Clyde, a lot of those people came through here a lot, in part because we are in the corner of 4 states. And at that time, if you made it across a state line, law enforcement didn't follow you. So made a good area for robberies.
Yeah.
And we also had the largest safe house in the Midwest here in town for mobsters. And in that particular building, it was reputed that Al Capone had a safe house that was run by his aunt. And in fact, it was the only apartment that had a buzzer to the front desk.
Ooh, okay.
So the front desk could buzz them directly. So I guess it's kind of curious because you see something that you would think you would see in a gangster movie, walk down the stairs,
Yeah.
80 years later, whatever.
That is creepy.
So that was very interesting. I think also in that same building, I've been in the basement and walked around a corner, and a shadow man was walking towards me.
Ooh.
And it's like we each came around the corner and startled the other.
You both went,
He turned
whoa,
and ran, and I and the person with me, we run after him, and he runs into a room. When we get there's nothing there. But we joked afterwards. It was, you just felt like you were almost in a cartoon because we all 3 come around the corner and almost jump,
Yeah, no kidding. That is great. But what a cool interaction. But you didn't find anything after that. It was just gone. Oh.
Yeah. He ran down the hall and into a room. We ran in there right after him, and nothing. But
that's amazing.
I think the time that I've been most startled, I don't think I can say I've ever been, like terrified or that kind of thing, but maybe a little concerned, was we were investigating a Civil War. It's a park now, but during the Civil War, it was used as an encampment a lot by both sides. Our area had the worst guerrilla warfare of the entire Civil War in our area. And so you had all kinds of skirmishes, and it wasn't well organized at times. And, someone got shot and the body may just lay there type thing.
Oh, sure.
We're investigating the encampment area. It's getting late, and we're winding up. We're starting to walk out to the front of the park to the parking area, and I happen to be leading up the rear end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I get that, and I've heard other investigators describe it, the wet blanket effect of feeling like something heavy and dense just fell over you, around you.
Oh, okay.
And suddenly, I couldn't move. It's like you're wrapped up in something almost.
Oh, geez.
Can't move. It's like you're pushing on the air around you. I try to yell out. No one hears me. They keep walking. And this goes on long enough that they've probably walked a good at least 500 feet or a little more. Enough for me to go, okay, this isn't funny. And, I'm really, pushing, and boom, it's gone. I have to catch myself from falling on my face. And I straighten up and I turn around, and there's a shadow man standing behind me. And it looks like in the general outline of a Civil War soldier. You can see the line of his cap, and looks like he's got a long barrel rifle over his left shoulder. Mm-hmm. And see me, and I just kind of look at him and a little startled, and he turns to his left and takes about 3 steps and disappears.
Wow.
And I turn back around and yell, and then everyone can hear me and everything's fine. And my sense is he was checking us out.
Uh-huh.
And that location's kind of interesting too. We find that to get EVPs and anything else out of there, we have to break up and the men away from the women.
Oh.
And whatever's there, it seems like it's mainly soldiers, don't seem to interact with the men.
Oh. Okay.
And our guess is that they view them suspiciously because they don't know whether they're friend or foe.
No, that's true. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Wow.
But we tend to, the women in the group will stay apart, do EVP sessions, etc., and we get results. And in fact, one night we were sitting there, I think there were 4 of us that night, and we all heard the distinct sound of someone walking around us in a circle, and you could hear the swish of trousers.
Wow.
And we all got the sense, not that he was like, threatening or anything, almost like he was protective of us, watching over us.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So
that's really powerful. Wow.
That's an interesting place, but that's the time that I've been the most concerned for a moment.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, if you get stuck in place and can't move and nobody can hear you, that is horribly isolating, and it had to have been, I don't know if I want to say frightening, but like you said, concerning. Yeah.
Yeah, it was to the point. If it had gone on, a while longer, yeah, I'm sure I would have been frightened. But it went long enough that I was definitely getting a little concerned. Okay, this isn't funny.
Wow.
But and the funny thing is, I always described it. And it's probably been close to 10 years ago now. And I always described it. It just kind of felt like a heavy, wet blanket being thrown over you, even though it's just air.
Right.
And then over the years, I've heard other investigators describe the same experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as a wet blanket.
Even the so many times you hear investigators talk about the feeling of walking through like soup, like the air feels thick and heavy, and it just feels like everything takes so much more energy. And I'm wondering if that's when we were talking about the whole portal idea and stuff, if that's when the portals are really manifesting, is when the atmosphere to us feels like soup, and that's when those realities are merging and those things come to pass.
I think that's possible, and to be honest, practitioners more in the shamanic realm, and even voodoo practitioners, so forth, will, there are those who talk about walking sideways into the veil, and their descriptions are very much that same, that you're walking between the two worlds, basically.
Oh, okay. And so that's where the thick and heaviness comes from. But you think that you were frozen in place by this person, this being, so it was holding you.
Well, I can't say that, but it was standing there behind me when it was released.
Okay.
So whether whether it happened and he was curious to check it out and walked over, or whether somehow he was involved, I have no idea. But when it lifted and I turned around and looked at him, then he literally just turned and walked off and disappeared. So he lost interest. It seemed to me, when
sure.
Maybe he was curious as to why I wasn't moving either. I don't know.
Right. Like you just appeared like an apparition to him, and he went, "Wow, what's that?" and stood there and watched. And then maybe as you could move, you just started phasing back and disappeared for him. Huh. That is...
Either that, or he was just, observing us as, living things. And, I'm stuck in one place, and obviously trying, pushing forward, but not moving.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know whether somehow it was some sort of paranormal experience for him, or he was like, what in the world's wrong with her?
What's wrong with that lady?
No one go check it out. I don't know.
He went, I guess they know why she was in the back.
Yeah, really.
That's awesome.
Exactly. So I don't know. So, I didn't get any, sense of threat or anything from him.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like he was standing there and it's like, oh, okay, and walked off, so.
That is really cool. Wow.
Uh,
And you're right, that does help to have so many locations near you, with so many different phenomena. Many people talk about, there's these, I don't know if they're ley lines or what it is with certain places, but they just seem to attract paranormal. And I imagine being in the heart of the nation, there's got to be a convergence of ley lines like crazy around you guys.
well, there are definitely at least a couple that, people who really attribute to ley lines, talk about a couple of places through here that are ley lines. And, I know that, different points on the earth have stronger magnetic fields and
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. So, throughout history, there seems to have been a correlation to ley lines and people being drawn to them. I mean, there's a disproportionate number of ancient temples and sites on ley lines, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And so people have been drawn to those locations for thousands of years, whether it's, somehow instinctively sensing energy or what, I don't know, but it's sort of in our nature to be drawn to them.
Right, and yeah, exactly. And if that's the case, then perhaps that's the same for other things as well. But, and,
and I, there does seem to be certain places that just seem to have more activity overall than other places, and not necessarily corresponding to how long it's been occupied or any particular factor. So
sure, yeah,
it's probably a combination of different things, honestly.
Right. You had mentioned that there's lots of there's lots of limestone and running water, underground water, then ley lines, and it's like the perfect storm, I suppose. But
geologically, I think it is, yeah.
Right, yeah. As far as natural things that naturally generate energy, yeah, that's pretty incredible. But so, any other stories? This is really interesting. This is awesome.
I always I love video or photo evidence is great.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we got to talking on our page, based on a couple of those photos.
Mm-hmm.
And and they're very interesting. The photos that you commented on, then we ended up talking.
Right.
And that came out of, we did a documentary with the Weather Channel several years ago after the big F5 tornado in Joplin. And they contacted me and wanted to do a documentary about activity related to, coming out of the tornado or the area afterwards. Mm-hmm. And there was generally a spike in activity and reports and people asking for help for about 18 to 24 months after the tornado.
Wow.
And I think that it was the scale of it, to give you an idea. The path of the tornado was almost a mile wide in points, and it was on the ground for 13 miles.
Wow.
And it hit, it started just at the edge of town and took out over 9,000 structures.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Yeah. Including one of the first things that hit, if people who were watching the Weather Channel, and they've played the clips a number of times, Mike Bettis happened to be chasing the storm, and no one really expected it to be a tornado. They thought it was just a rain wall, and but the way the rain was wrapped, they couldn't see even on Doppler that it was a tornado.
Wow.
And everyone thought they thought it was going to go north of town too. And he comes up over the hill to the southwest side of town and sees the largest hospital in town. And it was massive, 9 stories. The footprint of the hospital was well over, I think it was close to 2 acres. And it had hit it with basically 400-mile-an-hour winds and moved the hospital 5 inches off of its foundation.
Oh my God. Wow.
And I remember being on my front porch, and just the color of the sky, it had a greenish cast, and the wind started sucking sideways, and it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be worse than they thought.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking in, and I looked at the TV, and the Weather Channel's on, and they have Joplin written, on the screen, and I'm looking at the building and literally going, well, the only building that could be would be St. John's Hospital, but like, part of it's gone.
Oh my God.
And it scoured the ground so much that it sucked bark off trees. There were no road signs.
Right.
And it flattened so much of the town that in places you could see 5 miles across, just nothing.
Jeez.
And I grew up here, and other than being away a few years, I've lived here my whole life, and even for months, you could get lost driving through town because there were no markers, and you'd have to literally count. Okay, I'm on this street. This is the next street. I'm in this block.
Oh, geez.
And so the only thing I can compare it to are pictures of World War II Europe,
Right.
after the bombing.
Right. And you just think of the force of that, what kind of force does it take to pull street signs out? Because that's got to be extraordinary.
Oh, yeah. And then, you'd have trees standing that, just all the bark is ripped off of it.
Just peeled.
And it was amazing. The stories, even during the tornado, because something very unique happened is that as injured were taken to area hospitals, there were dozens and dozens of children that repeated the same story. And, there's no way any of them had connection with each other. They would talk about the butterfly people.
Oh, yes.
That while it was going on, the butterfly people or a butterfly person came, and they really described them as very tall beings and seemed to be made more of light, and they had butterfly wings. And that they would stand, and it was like, some of them described it like they held the wind away from the people, or they shielded, acted as shields from debris, things like that. Very consistent stories.
Right.
And the interesting thing is none of them referred to them as angels.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in a very Bible Belt area. It would be very amazing that, at least some of them wouldn't refer to them as angels, but none of them did. It universally was the butterfly people.
That's right. Yeah, I remember hearing about that, and I remember that discussion, and what a phenomenal thought that somehow these beings were there, and how profound that is. Now, I do agree that it's really curious that people wouldn't describe them as angels, but they truly must not have looked like what people understand to be angels then. So what are they then?
Or at least the typical depiction, yeah.
Right.
And it was all children who saw them. Even if there were other people with them, it was always, smaller children, and that they described them all the same.
Wow.
And there literally were dozens of these reports. But there's a curious sort of second half to that didn't get reported as much. Because immediately afterwards, because no one was expecting this, and
We got about
it was graduation
30
day
seconds.
for the biggest high school in the area. I mean, there were all kinds of things going on. So lots of people were out away from home.
Mhm.
And so after the storm went through, you had a lot of survivors walking the streets trying to get somewhere.
Hey, Lisa.
And a lot of people reported seeing shadow figures walking with the survivors.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're about to hit our break.
Huh?
We're about to hit the last break. So
Okay.
it's actually probably started already where the music should have come in. But ladies and gentlemen, don't go away. I do want to continue and hear the rest of this because I'm absolutely riveted by this. But don't go away. We'll be back in just a couple minutes for the last half hour of the show tonight with Lisa Martin here on the Paranormal Portal. Well, the good news is that I hear from the people in the TFR chat that they are hearing all the bumpers as well. So on their end, it all sounds normal. But on our end here, it's a little muted. So I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen, those of you listening on YouTube. But we are carrying on ahead. Everything is all steam forward, and tonight we are joined by Lisa Martin of the Paranormal Science Lab, who has just gone into telling us about the big F5 tornado that had come through Joplin, Missouri, and the reports of the butterfly people, that many children experienced seeing these luminescent winged beings that were protecting them from the storm. Really amazing encounter stories, and they didn't identify them as angels, but as butterfly people. Consistent descriptions from children that had no contact with each other. So very interesting, but also Lisa was just bringing to light another part of the story that hasn't been disclosed or hasn't been discussed. And Lisa, I'll let you take that away again.
Well, I mean, it's been discussed some, but it hasn't gotten the attention that the butterfly people did.
Okay.
In the aftermath of the storm, there were just a lot of people out because there was a huge high school graduation going on as it hit and so forth. And people ended up walking the streets trying to get somewhere. And sometimes you had to walk 10, 20 blocks to get to anywhere that wasn't just rubble. And a lot of people, including first responders, reported seeing, survivors walking, and they would see shadow figures walking along with the survivors. And they were described pretty uniformly as being a dark shadow figure, but it looked like they wore a hooded cloak.
Oh wow!
So you couldn't see a face or features, but as if they were just either guiding or walking along with the survivors. I don't know if
Sure.
And most people described it as feeling like that they were just guiding or protecting them on their journey to wherever.
Wow. I hadn't heard anything about that, so that is really incredible. But I guess with such a supercharged event, I know, to me, I've had, again, personal experience, if you don't mind me sharing, but
Sure.
I'll tell you the story of what happened. And I lived in Minnesota, and I lived right on the Mississippi River, and we get, the usual thunderstorms and all of that. But one thunderstorm went through about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was just so electrical. I mean, it was just, I've never seen so much lightning in my life. It was just like somebody was sitting outside with a strobe light for, a half hour, and then I could see it going off in the distance. And, I lived right on the river, so I could see Wisconsin, which was right across the river, and just watching these huge thunderheads just filling the whole night sky with this flashing brilliance. And it was just amazing. But as I was standing out there, I swear that I was standing out in the grass next to the beach, and it was like the grass was glowing, and I don't know how else to describe it. It was glowing. And as I was standing there, it was like I'd keep seeing these faint figures walking around. And at one point I'm started walking around, and it's, dark. It's out in the rural area, so there's no like city lights or anything like that, but I can see everything just perfectly. There's no moon or anything because everything was just glowing. And at one point, what happened was, and it just blew me away, is like I was standing there, and it was like this fog person walked up to me about maybe 2 feet away, and just kind of stood there, and then he kind of tilted his head sideways, or her head, whatever the hell it was, and I'm looking at it like, just focusing on it, and suddenly it put its hand up like waving its hand in front of my face, like, hey, can you see me? Can you see me? And I'm like, yeah, I can see you. and then it turned and just like was gone. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? This is really unusual. But I started thinking about how storms may supercharge the atmosphere in such a way as that veil or that barrier is so much thinner, and you can get that kind of interaction. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that's possible, or perhaps spirits or entities, whatever you want to say. I mean, it's some sort of energy phenomena, conscious or not. But that kind of atmosphere, they might have drawn more energy from it that enabled them to be seen.
Right. Yeah. Very good point. but very powerful. And now that you're telling me about this, I mean, that would have had to have been a supercharged event in Missouri, and to see the butterfly people and these cloaked figures wandering around afterwards, it maybe there is something to that.
Well, I definitely think that when you have particularly a sudden discharge of a lot of energy, and a thunderstorm certainly wasn't like this tornado. I mean, it was. I'm not even sure what you would equate it to as far as the number of bombs or that kind of thing going off in, say, World War II, but
right.
Just a huge amount of energy released, in a very short time, that it definitely, I think, charges things. And then it seems to also, I think, affect things. And I've been asked, and I've asked this question too. Well, you would think, that you would have this spike in paranormal activity, almost, immediately, and maybe very quickly, and subside back to sort of a normal baseline. And, while that would seem to work in our physical world, we don't know what the rules are on the other side. And I actually was having this discussion with John Zaffis once, and John made the comment, well, spirit doesn't necessarily experience time in the same linear fashion that we do. So that may account for why the spike, happened and continued for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know.
Right. Very good point. I used to love his show. I mean, I still watch the reruns of the Haunted Collector, but I hope he puts something together again soon, because he just seems like a real great guy with a real smooth approach. But I would like to spend a little bit of time discussing any cryptid researching that you've done.
The most prevalent is we have in our general area there are sort of Bigfoot type sightings. Some seem to be, I guess, more of the traditional Sasquatch or Bigfoot type. However, there is one area not far from us, and it's actually on tribal land. That it seems to be a Bigfoot type creature, but it's referred to as the Goat Man. And although in different parts of the country, there are Goat Man legends that are more, a goat head, that kind of thing. This creature seems to be more of a hairy Bigfoot, but with horns that circle, that look like a
ram's horns.
Yeah, big horn, ram horns on the side of its head. And we were able to investigate some tribal land for some tribal leaders, and they don't, they don't welcome people in a lot, but they did, and we got to hear stories of what's happened over the years. And their oral tradition is that the Goat Men have been in this particular valley since as long as the Indians have been there. And they basically give them room, and as long as they don't intrude, the Goat Men leave them alone. And they told a story that there's a small river that runs through the bottom of this valley, and I guess it was getting to where there was flooding, and so the state had sent in the Department of Natural Resources to dredge it and whatever they needed to do to stop the flooding. And so a couple of the tribal leaders were telling us this story, and it had happened, I guess it's probably about 15 years ago now, they said. And the men were down there working, and it's probably 3/4 of a mile away from where these people live. And suddenly they heard gunshots. So they went down to investigate, and the natural resource workers were coming out. They met them and looked really frightened. And they asked them what happened. And they said that, described the creature, and that it came at them, and all they had was a .22, and they shot at it and thought they had hit it in the shoulder, and it screamed and ran off. And they left and said they weren't going to come back and work without shotguns. Oh. And we went down, and they took us down there investigating. The whole way down there, the valley, it has pretty steep sides, and there were several times that we had the distinct sensation we were being watched, and there were times you could hear something go through the brush at the top of the ravine. And, we're trying to film and take pictures, etc. There'd be a couple times you'd see a movement in the tree limbs and everything it was too tall to be a deer or something like that. It didn't sound like that, but, right. as cryptid stories generally go, and we weren't able to get any pictures or anything, but definitely had the sensation that something was tracking us and watching us up there. And that's one of the more interesting cryptid investigations, but nothing definitive found. But the elders are also very particular, warning people not to take anything from the land, not even a feather, a leaf, a rock, that kind of thing. And part of that's also tied to stories of the little people. Oh, okay. And Indian little people were sort of like Irish fairies. Right. Not the Disney fairies, but the Irish fairies. Sure. And that they look like Indians, but about 2 feet tall. And they're tricksters. They will kidnap people, and if you see one, you shouldn't discuss it. And you can entice them out with goodies, candy and goodies, but you may not like the results, and they don't like to discuss it very much. Sure. But those are some of the interesting things that go on around here.
Yeah, we've had another guest on the show, Robin Moonshadow, who's does research on the proto-pygmies and the little people, and she's talked a lot, not about that specific kind, which I find really interesting, but I love the idea of those beings existing, and maybe it's the child in me, maybe it's the romantic in me, but I just love the idea that, again, the universe has such diversity and such possibility. That to me is exciting.
Mm-hmm. And there's documented accounts of them, even some of the tribal chiefs seeing them back in the 1800s and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so it's very fascinating to me as well.
Yeah, I think it's just phenomenal. But it's the cryptids are always tough because they know when people are coming. They know how to survive and exist because that's their home. We're just visiting those places, so I imagine that it's not real difficult to hide from people in most cases because we're just not very good in the wild, considering.
We've lost a lot of that skill that we had thousands of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. We're just like lumbering oafs out there, and we make noise. We probably smell really weird because of all the chemicals and stuff. So, like every other animal out there, they got a amazing sense of smell. And I don't mean animal in a dismissive place, but I mean just another being. They hear better than we do. They smell better than we do. Probably on the par with a bear. And, bears have many, many, many times more powerful than a bloodhound, their nose. Yeah, so, if they want to not be seen, I'm sure it's not a real stretch to stay out of our reach. But they still sometimes choose to, which I find really interesting.
Well, I do too. There's a situation that we investigated and were involved with, down in Oklahoma that seemed to be that kind of situation that they chose to be seen but not get too close.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that happened several times to different people. And so, but again, it's something you could never really explain what it was or anything. And so,
Right.
one of these days, maybe, but.
Well, we've whittled it down to about 10 minutes left of the show, which goes to show you that when a conversation is good, there's just so much that can be said that we just won't have time for on the show. So I sure hope you will come back repeatedly and be on the portal. I'd love to continue this discussion and discuss so many more things if you don't mind.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I enjoy these conversations.
But I would like you to take some time and talk about the group and how people can get involved with what you're doing, because I think that what you get, ladies and gentlemen, the Paranormal Science Lab, they do these ghost hunts and ghost tours and walkthroughs and stuff, but the proceeds go to help these places, stay open. I mean, these aren't like, people just trying to make money. They're so beneficial in their approach and giving back to the communities and stuff. So I'd really like to promote that a little bit on the show, because I think that is just marvelous.
Well, thank you. We do work with a number of historic sites that, they're not state supported. They're not, state or national parks, that kind of thing. And, and that's true of most historic sites. Most of them are privately owned, and the owners, it's up to them whether they can fix the roof or the well or, keep the lights on, much less be able to share that history with the public. And so we work with places in order to do that. And also to help promote local history, because kids don't learn, local history very much. And in our area, we have a lot of Civil War history, Indian Wars, Old West outlaws, Depression era gangsters that they don't learn about. So those are kinds of things that we try to facilitate for the public and for these locations. And as well as by doing so, we're able to investigate these locations over time, which we're very grateful for, because it helps build knowledge in this location, that you see things repeated over time. And in some places you almost get loops, that you get certain kinds of things or related to a certain time period, and it progresses over time and loops back. And so if you go to our, the best place to find us is on Facebook, Paranormal Science Lab. You can look at the events section. We've had people come in for tours from all over the country and Canada. I mean, I've been amazed. It always surprises me when I hear that, but we're so pleased. And people come out and have fun and learn a little bit about history and hopefully a good time in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have done such a nice job. And clearly people have really loved it, because your attendances are just off the charts. I mean, people, like you said, come from all over to do this, and it benefits those people that are opening their homes and their places to our enthusiasm and to our investigations and stuff. And I think that really needs to be encouraged. So ladies and gentlemen, look for Paranormal Science Lab on Facebook. Get involved in the group. If you're just an enthusiast and want to just learn a lot, it's a great site, because Lisa and I don't know, how many people are involved with Paranormal Science Lab?
Regularly, we have about 5 full-time members, and then we have several part-time members.
Okay. And how many people are involved with the Facebook page?
3.
3. So there's 3 of you, and all 3 of you are always putting together content and putting together information for the group and sharing that on the site. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. it's an amazing site, and I know I've learned a bunch just by reading through stuff that you put up there. I found so many
thank you.
interesting things, and yeah, I mean, there's a reason. I mean, I knew you were an interesting person, of course, just from the group, but having you on the show has just been so eye opening to, a number of things, just including the way that you address these things and have looked into them, and hypotheses that you throw at them is just really fresh and interesting to me, and I love your unique approach.
Oh, thank you.
So you also have a number of books out there, and I did go over that. How can people check out your books?
Well, they're available like on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all of the online book sources. They're available at Walmart.com as well. And then in our area, they're in some of the local bookstores as well. But you'll want to look under my author name is Lisa Livingston Martin, my full name, and you can any of those places you can find them and check them out, and a lot of history as well as ghost stories, and some of them have results from investigations. And then the Route 66 book is a little different. It is all about gangsters and outlaws on Route 66 over time, and it's a good read for adventure and history.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to check these out myself. So I haven't done that, but you can count on the fact that I definitely will. But
thank you.
In the next time you come on, we'll have to talk about more like about the UFO stuff, anything that you've experienced with that, and on all of that. But again, there's so much that we just will never have time to squeeze into a 2-hour block. So I'm really looking forward to having you back on the show.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've really enjoyed talking, and it's been really fun, and you're doing a great job, and I'd be happy to help promote your show. So. Oh,
I appreciate that. I'll take I'll take any help you want to give, but no, I do appreciate it.
We'd be happy to post shows or whatever you need to. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that too, because the Paranormal Portal is a labor of love, and it's something that I've worked very hard at to get it out there, and we're growing. It's growing, not by leaps and bounds, but it's growing, and it's been really exciting to see what it's becoming. And we've also have, a network of people that have offered their assistance to people that may need it, and just knowing that you're in the Midwest there. If anything comes up in your area, do you mind if I point people towards you?
No, that's fine, because even if it's something that's too far away for me to take on in a certain time period or whatever, I know a lot of people throughout the Midwest and on the East Coast as well. So. Well,
I appreciate that, because that's certainly something that it's amazing, doing the show, how many people have contacted me and they don't want to be on the show. They don't want to share their experience. To them, it's, it's really personal. It's really painful. It's really uncomfortable. And, they've asked for my help. They've asked for my assistance. And so many people have come forward to say, if you have people that need help, I'd love to help. And it's just been an amazing thing to be able to network and be a resource for people out there, because a lot of people going through the paranormal are absolutely, they're in trouble. They don't know how to process it. They don't know how to deal with it. Something has happened that's not supposed to happen, and they don't know how to quantify it. So it's been really great that, people like yourself can be resources out there to turn to. And so I really, really appreciate that.
Oh, happy to. That's what it's all about.
It is, people helping people. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're about 2 minutes out, but thank you for being a part of the show and for being here and listening to our discussion tonight. Please make sure to find us on Facebook, not only Paranormal Science Lab, but Paranormal Portal Radio on Facebook. And you can be a part of our community as well. And if there's anything you have to share yourself, any kind of experience or information or encounter or just an opinion about what's going on the show, please feel free to email us. Our email for the show is paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And like I said, if you've got something you're going through and you need some help, you need just to bounce it off somebody, please feel free to email me. I'll do everything I can to help you and to be there to help you get through whatever it is you're going through. We will be back, of course, tomorrow night. Don and I will be chewing up the Saturday night together. And I know Don's really wishing he could be here on these Friday nights, but he can make it Saturdays, so we're going to keep him at it, and on Wednesdays. But we will be back tomorrow night for another episode. But stick around, ladies and gentlemen, for Beyond the Veil coming up next with Chris and Cherie. And then later, you get Jimmy Jean into the microcosm with Brandy, Rio, and Jimmy Jean just doing that magic that they do in the late night hours. So thank you all very much for being here and being a part of it. I'm trying to think. There was something else I wanted to throw out before the end of the episode, and I'm forgetting it. But no, I've lost it. Oh, there's a project that I'm doing. I'm going to be working on some videos about putting together some do-it-yourself paranormal gear as well. So look for that on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. But we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Help each other out there. And we will see you tomorrow night here on the Paranormal Portal, 7 p.m. Pacific time. We'll see you then.